Hi, everybody, it's Weird Wink Wilkinson laughing and scratching at you. How's everybody doing today? I got a little bit of a stiff neck. Let me just fix this up. Oh, that feels a lot better. Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
There are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained, things that most people don't want to know about. That is where we come in.
No human being would stack books like this.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Oh, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is paying 101. The instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
Do you want some coffee, Mr. Tully?
Do I?
Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
It's a cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
Hey, what do you say we both be independent together, huh?
I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
We have the tools, we have the talent.
It's Miller time.
Luminous beings, so we, not this fruit basket.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Hey, these aren't my rules. Come to think of it, I don't have any rules.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
You know something? Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am insane.
Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
Rise to the top, oh yeah.
That's the nicest thing a dog can say about anybody.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point. You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
Sometimes it happens, someone has to deal with it, and who are you going to call?
It's showtime.
Welcome to Comic Book Radio, episode 258. I'm your host, Peter Stametti. Tonight, my guest is Aaron LOPRESTI. Aaron LOPRESTI is, I'll just say it, one of my favorite people to talk to in comics. I've talked to this guy a bunch over the years, and it's always a great conversation. Whether it's my channel or his channel, love having a conversation with Aaron. In fact, we were talking backstage before the show got started. That's why we're a little bit late. Thank you guys for bearing with us. And it felt like, all right, that's it. That's the show. I'll come on and I'll say, Aaron's taking the night off. You know, I caught up with him. And we're just going to end it. Everyone have a great night. But Aaron is here. Aaron is here, and I'm glad that you guys are too. Now, before I bring him on, I want to say hello to you guys. Let's see who we got here. Devil Flyer, what's up? Ink on Paper, how's it going? Citizen Ronin, we got Kevin Thomas, we got Ben Spar, what's up? Comics for Life, how's it going? Comics for Life. We also got Robert the Bruce. Ernest is here too. Cigar Gangster, how's it going, Cigar Gangster? Also, Lord Hinson, how's it going? We got Gen X Catholic here. Oh, it leapfrogged right over him. We also got What Geeks Do. What's up, What Geeks Do? And Paulus Arts is here too. What's up, guys? All right, so without further ado, let me just bring him on. The man of the hour, we got interdimensional Aaron LOPRESTI.
That's right. I'm constantly moving like Bigfoot. You can't get a clear photograph of me. I'll try and sit still though for the show here today.
You got that EMF field?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Just
exactly
gonna
what we're talking about.
blur the camera. Man, oh man, Aaron, it's good to talk to you, man. It's good to catch up with you. How you doing?
Well, thanks for having me on, Peter. I appreciate it. We haven't talked in a while, so it's going to be nice to do what we do here and talk about whatever happens to come up, because there's plenty of stuff going on for sure.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. I'm getting some people, when I had you on the show today, I'm getting some people asking me to have a good cryptid conversation with you.
I'm always open for that. I'm always up for that.
Now, I know you're I guess you could say a healthy skeptic. Are you a healthy skeptic or an unhealthy skeptic?
I'm a healthy skeptic. I'm cynical by nature, so but I love the possibility. So I'm always open to hearing arguments or presentations that might maybe sway my opinion.
I agree. I feel the same way. I want to believe. Yeah, I tend to. I don't know about you. I tend to believe like the eyewitnesses that like they at least think they've seen something, as opposed to when they show footage.
Well, I'll tell you this. My feeling about eyewitness, I used to be that way. I used to say, you know what, all these people can't be lying, but now with the internet and what I've experienced over the last 10 years, I think everyone's lying. You got to prove to me you're telling me the truth.
You think they're all lying? Okay.
I think everyone's lying until you give me a reason to believe you.
All right.
My
the fascination with the cryptids, where did that come from?
Oh, probably the same where everybody's did. As a kid, we would drive. I live in Oregon, right? And we would drive to the beach or wherever up to Mount Hood, and we would drive through the woods. And I was constantly scanning for Bigfoot, right? Like I wanted to be the kid who saw Bigfoot. And I think there's this natural inclination that I have towards monsters and liking that kind of thing. So I desperately wanted the Loch Ness Monster to be real, Bigfoot to be real, all these things. But I'm just, over the years, have become so skeptical and cynical because of 95% of the videos and the stuff you see. You're kind of like, come on, if you're gonna try and fool me with a video, at least put some effort into it, So I'm out there constantly, as you know, on my show every week. I dig up the latest cryptid videos I can find to see if maybe I can find something that might raise my eyebrow a little bit. So, have
you talked to anyone within the cryptid paranormal field community?
I have not, because I'm afraid that I would come off as being too rude.
Okay, so I've talked to a lot of people in there. I got a lot of interviews on the channel. I've talked to a lot of people, not just on here, but also in private. Yeah. I find that there is a lot of stuff. It seems like there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a strange thing. There seems to be unusual reasons as to why it's difficult to capture these things, and then sometimes it seems to be very obvious reasons as to why. Like when it's legitimate and you see something, that's a hell of a tough spot to be put in. What do? You try to take pictures, or do you try to flee for your life?
Right, exactly.
So,
and I get that part of it. I do get that part of it. But
there's a lot of stuff though with like the military and all of that. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you believe any of that?
Were you talking about the UFO stuff?
Not just UFO stuff, but actually with cryptid sightings, with unusual creature sightings, experimentation that's occurred. There's a lot of stuff that's been declassified over the years, especially in your neck of the woods. How far are you from, I know you're in Oregon, how far are you from the Columbia River Gorge?
Not far, 70 miles or less.
Have you ever been there? There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, well, I mean, these are the things. When I was like a kid, like there's a lake over in Eastern Oregon, right? And it's called Wallowa Lake. And for a while there was the Wallowa Lake Monster. And it turned out to be a sturgeon, which is a lot of times what happens in these lake monsters. It ends up being a sturgeon. And we have what's called the Bonneville Dam on the Columbia River, and they have just enormous sturgeon in and around the dam, and great stories about when they were laying the foundation for the dam. These scuba divers went in there and they would see these 12 or 14 foot, essentially giant catfish, right? And just freaked them out. They had no idea because they're down there on the bottom, and so we had a lot of this legendary stuff, and then it always kind of became logically explained at some point. And my feeling is one of the things that really sort of turned my mind and I started looking into this stuff a little bit closer was just a couple of years ago, a Japanese research ship, they had lowered a line. I'm sure you've seen the video, and they captured a giant squid on camera, right? And we all know they existed, right? Because you'd find, remains in whales or pock marks on whales from the, and then they'd figure out the length and the size. But they actually filmed one, and I kept thinking, the ocean is so deep and so vast. If these guys can find these, like they found a coelacanth, they caught a coelacanth, a couple years ago, and I mean, a fish that they thought had been extinct for, millions of years now, whatever it was, and yet got a bunch of people out in the woods looking for Bigfoot and they can't find him.
What I want to know at this point with the Bigfoot stuff in the woods, and someone has to have done this at this point, is to get some LiDAR going, to sweep the woods, get some thermal readings and all that stuff, but like on a large scale. And I wonder how difficult that is, only because a lot of it is maybe it's a government issue. There's certain spots where things are rumored to be seen and you really can't go over there and investigate. But just in these normal areas where they are doing like Bigfoot hunts and all that other stuff, someone needs to just pool their resources together and get a LiDAR scan going. It can't be that difficult.
You would think. I mean, they did essentially that with radar in the Loch Ness, right? This was when I was a kid in the 70s, where they put all the boats together and swept the loch with radar, and of course or sonar, but they didn't find anything.
Yeah.
And so you would think that with drones or whatever, they could do something like that and scan the area.
Oh yeah.
But as far as your question about like government people or saying that when the military coming out, I go back to I don't believe anybody, because I always assume somebody has a motivation for why they might be telling you this. So it's kind of like a story is a story, and a good story is I enjoy a good story, but it's like I'm at that point where I'm not interested in someone's story. I want some proof. I want some physical proof that I can kind of latch my teeth onto and go, now that's interesting. Maybe there is something there. Have you seen I just discovered this not too long ago because I was scanning the internet looking for, some material for my show. And what was it now? There's allegedly, I think up in Alaska or maybe up farther north, there's a pyramid that's buried allegedly.
Yeah, the Black Pyramid in Alaska. Yeah.
Yes. And so you've got that's, you're kind of like, I was like, wow, that's wild. But how do you, again, if it's allegedly covered up by the government, if it actually did exist or is there, it's like, how are we ever going to find out, right? Because they're not going to.
Yeah, the closest we have to anything concrete, and I use the term loosely, is a bunch of remote viewing CIA reports that have been declassified over the years that have to do with remote viewers allegedly. Finding this thing. And then there was also that really odd seismograph report of that earthquake over in, I believe it was Japan. And then the readings came back over in Alaska, and it didn't make any sense in terms of why did it fluctuate in that region, and the shape of what it was. There was something in the mountain that didn't make any sense.
Right, I remember seeing that, and they were like, that was the. But again, I saw that, and I was like, I suppose you could check and see if it actually was real. But my first inclination was, well, how do I know that this seismograph, that they're just not making this up and putting it on the internet for clicks? You know what I mean? I suppose there's a way you can go back and check that, but I found, I saw that was kind of interesting that they. that it looks like they found something, or there is something there.
Yeah. Now I'm like you in a way where I got 1 foot in the like, yeah, this is really great, I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I use that term a little loosely. And then I got the other foot in the, I don't believe anything anyone is telling me unless I experienced it myself.
Well, we have got to that point in society where people will lie at the drop of a hat for attention, you know? So it's kind of like, is this guy really being honest, or is he just, you know, trying to get 15 minutes of fame or whatever? So
yeah, because even the reports of things, even, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff that, yeah, they did these projects, they did that, they put money into it. I'm more concerned now, the older I get, with either way, no matter what, if there's something there, if there's something going on, if there's some kind of mysterious stuff, if they're, you know, looking into this or they're not, there's an awful lot of time and money being poured into this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So either what are they looking for, or what are they covering up and lying about? And they're saying they're looking for these things or doing these things, and they're really doing something else entirely.
Well, that,
you know,
I'm more inclined to believe that. I am a big, I guess what we used to call conspiracy theorists, and now it's all the conspiracies are pretty much, at least government-wise, have been proven to be true. So it's
now
like
it's a conspiracy predictor.
Right, exactly. So, you know, them doing something that they don't want us to know about, then trying to get us to look over here and say, oh no, we're, you know, that doesn't, you know, that is completely plausible to me, that they're either hiding something, they're either hiding what we hope they're hiding, or they're let us believe something's going on that isn't, because they're hiding something else, you know. So
yeah, speaking of which, 10-8, that's a great thing. Yeah, and they've said this for a while now with the Giza pyramid, but now they're finding with ground penetrating radar, there's something conclusive where these things go down like kilometers. Did you see this? Did you hear about this?
I haven't delved too deeply into it, but I did see that with the pillars underneath, or the coils, I guess they were giant coils.
They're like these coils, for what they can make out anyway, of the shape of these things. This is kind of funky.
Yeah,
I know there's that whole theory with like the power plant scenario of the Great Pyramid and all these other things involved, but that's you know, it's just kind of looking through what it is. They're not, or at least we haven't ever found apparently any bodies, any tomb type of things in these pyramids. They're all in the Valley of the Kings, which is weird that they keep saying over and over again, oh, that these are tombs for the pharaohs, and they've never found any bodies in any of the tombs, the sarcophagus, anything, and they go, oh, well, maybe they got stolen. But there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty insane, and I don't know if they'll ever, I can't see them excavating so much underneath the Great Pyramid as to find these things, but
it would be interesting if they could drill, you know, without tearing down the pyramids, but drill down and get down to where this thing was, and then get a camera down there or something, so we have, you know, some, because you know, a lot of times, and this is, you know, we all have this problem, a lot of times we find what we're looking for, right? And we see stuff that we want to see, and maybe it's something else, but you wanted it to be this, so that you interpret it that way. So there's all that sort of you know, stuff that goes into it, that people can lose objectivity. So it'd be nice to have like some sort of verification, but it is really wild and interesting that there is some sort of what appears to be structural technology underneath these pyramids.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Now, there's all kinds of secrets, obviously, that have been kept in the ages, throughout all of humanity. All these different things where they kind of cover up, they misdirect, they don't want anyone to know, and only a select few people know these secrets. Is there anything like that in comics? Anything that we should know about that you'd like to maybe share a secret with, like, you know, this has been a secret for a long time, you know, and are there tiny hamsters creating these comics, Aaron?
No, you know what the thing is, though, and I had this conversation, I can't remember, I guess it was with Ron Garney, now that I think about it, that there is sort of this, when you want to be a comic book creator as a kid, or you're a fan, just a reader, right? Maybe you don't want to be a creator, but there you create this sort of image of like the Marvel bullpen or whatever, right? And there never was a Marvel bullpen. There was all fiction. John Buscema and John Romita did not go up to Marvel and everybody Kirby and hang out and draw. They all worked at home and brought their stuff in. But it's interesting how, because we had made the comment that, I don't read comics that much anymore. I mean, I had said this, and Ron's like, I don't either, and we were kind of discussing, well, why do you think that is? Why did we love comics so much, even into my adulthood, right? When I was in college in the 80s and McFarlane came around in Spider-Man, I was reading, and I was, I thought it was great, but I was also trying to get in, right? So I was like super excited about the whole thing. And what happens is you get in there and you find out how the process works and how the politics work behind the scenes.
You see the sausage getting made.
Yeah, you get you see this, exactly. You see the sausage get made, and then suddenly that sort of that childlike wonderment is just stripped away, because you've now been behind the scenes making, like you said, making the sausage, and you can't ever get it back. So I would just say to guys out there, you guys out there that are readers, and everybody watching this show obviously is a comic book reader. It's like, you never want to meet your heroes, right? Because they'll always let you down. Don't dig too deep into how comic books are made. It'll ruin the mystical wonder of it all that makes it so great in collecting and reading them. So that's I don't know if that's not a conspiracy theory by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly, it's an interesting phenomena that happens, right? And
yeah. There's a mystique about it, all this kind of stuff. There's always that level of, here's what we present to the public, and here's what goes on behind the scenes. It's like that with, I guess, anything you could really think of that has to do with something that's for public consumption in terms of entertainment, whether it's making movies, music, sports. There's always like this kind of, this is what it's like, and we present to the public, right. And behind closed doors, you let the expletives fly. It's not so much like kumbaya around the campfire as it is like Glenn Ross.
Yeah, exactly. And I had the same this is really kind of a bummer for me, because I had the same experience with Hollywood, and because I went to film school at USC, and even when I was in school, right, we were all dreaming of being the next Spielberg, and it was so exciting, and it was just, you were buzzing all the time, right? Because, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get an Academy Award someday, and it's just this dream factory, literally. And then what happens is you graduate, and then you go into the marketplace and try and get a job, right? And a friend of mine, we saw an ad, and my roommate and I went to interview because they were looking for production assistants to write. We thought, okay, well, let's go check this out. This might be cool. So we drive, I don't remember where it was, someplace in LA, obviously, but they had this kind of like it almost felt like a trailer park, sort of, a aluminum building, one of those long, narrow, just sitting there on this lot. And we're like, what the heck is it? We go in there, and this woman comes out to meet us. And I use the term woman loosely. She was smoking, talk like this. And yeah. So we went into her office.
With her name, like, Patty.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, so, this is what we do here. And she goes in this whole, and it turned out they were making porn videos, like, buddy, you're looking at each other going, yeah, I don't think this is what we're really looking for. But she would take us, she took us down.
She's looking you up and down like, yeah, you'll do.
No, we're not actors. We're looking for production assistant jobs. So they were actually.
Turn around, sweetheart. Turn around.
Yeah, exactly. Turn around. Drop your pants and turn around.
Can you thrust for me? Thrust a little bit. All right.
It's so true. And she was showing us like this, their collection of videos and what they produced. And we were just trying to keep from laughing. Here we are, like two 21-year-olds going, what?
Oh, my Lord.
So we hightailed out of there and never followed up. But
so you met Harvey Weinstein's secretary.
Exactly. Well, no, Harvey would have never hired this woman. She was not in the attractive camp at all. But I did get a job reading scripts at TriStar Pictures, right?
Oh, okay. What time frame was this?
This would have been 87 or 88.
Wow, okay.
87.
Oh, that's a good time period for TriStar.
Yeah, and so we went in there, and they give you the script, and you're kind of excited because, you know, I walked in and I parked in the garage in Century City to go into the building, and Robin Wright walks right by me in the parking garage, you know, and I'm just like, you know, you're starstruck, this is starstruck, you think this is so cool. So they give you the script, and you have to read the script, right? So it's usually 120 pages, so it takes you about 2.5 hours to read the script, right? Then you have to write a book report on it, right? So I'm like, what am I, back in school? You know, so you basically write a treatment of the script, so the producers can read the script, or so they don't have to read the script, they read your coverage, right, which is usually about 1.5 pages, and then they can lie to their the agent going, yeah, I read it, and they go by your points and tell you why they didn't like it. And so they're paying you at this time they were paying us $50 a script, right, for basically about 4 to 5 hours work, plus your drive time back and forth from the studio to your apartment, right? And they would tell you, don't okay anything, because if you okay something and one of the producers reads it, when you okay it, you're forcing someone up the ladder to read it, and if they don't like it, you're in trouble. And so I'm like, well, why do you have any? It's like, so basically it was like nix everything no matter what it was, and so it just kind of like this whole Hollywood illusion. You're just going, it's just a sham, you know. It's like the guys who know people are the ones getting projects made. All these guys that are like getting an agent and dreaming of getting their script read, it's not happening. No one reads it.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of enlightening, but then it took the gloss off of it for me, right? I was kind of like, this isn't what I thought it was, and you know, so I got into comics instead, which is exactly like movies, except just a lot less money.
I was gonna say.
Exactly like Hollywood.
Oh boy. Katie did, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says, hello Aaron, everybody back Wraith of God 3. And if you guys haven't backed yet and you do want to back it, or at least check it out, it's pinned to the top of the chat, or it should be anyway. The link should be pinned there. Now, so we've dissected a little bit about not just the film industry but comics, and you mentioned, you know, you lost your innocence in terms of the magic and whatnot, but you're still making comics. Why?
Well, I'll tell you why. I've got another story for you, but it makes the point. So pre-COVID, I was at New York Comic Con, and I was set up right next to Terry Dodson, and Terry found some young art student to come and watch his booth, because Terry, when he goes to shows, he likes to spend more time sightseeing than actually at the show. So he always finds somebody to watch his booth for him, you know. So I didn't have to do it all the time. So he had this young guy in there that was an art student. Guy was incredible. I watched his sketchbook, and it was just phenomenal stuff. And so I asked him. I said, what? So you want to be a comic book artist? He goes, nah, not really. He goes, I just want to get into illustration, you know, magazine illustration and this different stuff. And I went, dude, this isn't the 40s. I was like, that stuff doesn't exist anymore. And I mean, I didn't burst his bubble like that, but I'm thinking this in my head going, he has this sort of idea that it's Norman Rockwell and the Saturday Evening Post, and you can do covers and, you know, do all these ad illustrations, and that stuff just, and this was pre-COVID, and it didn't exist anymore, and it really doesn't exist anymore now. And I thought to myself, I started looking around, and I'm like, look at all these talented people in comics. And it dawned on me at that moment that there's a lot of great illustrators in comics because there's no place else to go. There's no place you can make a living as an illustrator anymore except in comic books. And that sort of answers the question. Here I am, 61 years old, and I'm still doing comic books. Why? What else am I going to do? You know, it's not like I think I'm going to go work for,
You're supposed to say because you're so passionate about them, you care about the medium, you care about storytelling.
Well, I do, and
Come on.
The second part of that is obviously you've got to love it to do anything, right?
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's, I always used to fight to try and be like the best artist. I wanted to be like a superstar artist. That never happened. And then, what I found was that maybe the best thing I can do is be a storyteller. That's, if you combine all the things that I do well, that's the best thing I can do is be a storyteller. So where are my options? My options are comics. And I made it sound like it was a negative because drawing pages is hard work. And after you've been doing it for 30 years, you're like, wow, this is, this is even harder than it was when I was, 30 doing it. So there's that challenge of it. But, I toy with the idea of doing children's books every once in a while. And I've got some ideas for that type of thing where I can still write and draw. But the best comic books is like the last kind of last stand for storytelling that you can do, other than film, obviously. Yan
Zhao mentions storyboards or illustrations for gaming companies. Yeah, that's true.
But that to me is you've got to be satisfied with just being an artist. And I've never been satisfied with just being an artist. I had stories that I wanted to tell, right? And so that's why I'm doing Wraith of God and the things I'm doing independently now is because I'm getting the chance to tell those stories that I've been, quite frankly, sitting on, some of them for 20 years, because I would always pitch this stuff to Marvel and DC, but I was never in a position to get it done. I was never J. Scott Campbell or Arthur Adams or anybody that could come in and they'd do whatever I asked, So now I'm doing it myself.
Well, Wraith of God, did you ever pitch that to another company?
Yeah. A lot of the stuff I have is funny. It's like those almost got it. I almost got this published. Wraith of God, and a lot of guys probably in the chat know the story, but the Wraith of God was originally a Western Ghostwriter revamp proposal. And this was been about probably 96. And they just weren't interested. Now, maybe it was they weren't interested in me because I was very low level at that time. I'd just done Sludge. So I got a little bit of attention, Sludge for Ultraverse Malibu. But I hadn't really landed solidly into Marvel or DC. I was just kind of picking up assignments where I could. So I wasn't somebody they were looking at and going, oh yeah, that guy's a genius. But I really liked the pitch. And so when they turned it down or they weren't interested, I just revamped it a little bit and sat on it until I had an opportunity to do something with it. And I did pitch it to Dan DiDio, and we were this close to Wraith of God being a DC book, but we never got to that final stage of, tweaking and whatever. And then he ended up getting let go, and then, the whole thing was kaput. But I did get my Garbage Man book at DC. And that was simply because I fell into a situation where when I went over to DC, one of the things I talked to Dan about before I left Marvel was I said, I want to do some writing. Okay, I'm not demanding that you put me on a monthly book and I write a monthly book, but I've got some stories I want to do. And I'd like at least you to be willing to look at the proposal objectively. And if you don't like it, fine, but at least give me the opportunity. And he's like, I don't have any problem with that. And then at that time, Swamp Thing was being controlled by Vertigo, and Vertigo would not give it back to DC proper. And Dan wanted a monster book in the DCU. So we were talking before I took over Wonder Woman. He's like, I said, well, that's right up my alley. Let me see if I can come up with something. He said, okay. So I came up with Garbage Man. He liked it, and it was going to go through these. It went from being its own series. See, the thing with Dan was like, he'd jump on something, then he'd start going, no, wait a minute, that's probably isn't going to sell. And then he would start backing away, so to lessen his risk, or DC's risk. So it was originally going to be its own series. Then it was going to be a mini series. Then it was like, oh, why don't we do it as a backup in the Batman books? And then it became what it was, which was part of a collection of anthology books that nobody even knew ever got published. So it was like the worst thing that could have happened to it. But the series then, after a few years, they just gave it back to me. Dan just gave it back to me. He goes, we don't need it. because he got Swamp Thing back from Vertigo, and so he was now in the DCU, his monster book that he wanted, and so that's why I ended up getting all the rights back to Garbage Man and can publish it myself now. But so that actually did get.
Was there ever any talk about, you know, not giving it a series, but maybe just putting it in an issue of a series?
Yes. Well, one of the things that they had originally brought up was there was two ways to do the contract. It was like, we do this completely as a creator-owned thing, but it won't be part of the DCU, or they did this open-ended licensing agreement, right, where they pay you $2,500 as a licensing fee, and then they have the license for it forever, and they don't have to pay you anymore, right? So it's this, and then they can use it, like if they wanted to use Garbage Man in the Flash, they could have done that, right? Mm-hmm. But the only stipulation with this agreement was they had to use it once. They had to use the character once every 3 years, and I had to give my okay, right? They would say, we want to use it in the Flash, and so is going to write it, and I would say, okay, that's fine, go ahead and use it. Or they would have to like do like a Garbage Man special, and I'd have to write and draw it. And if I said no, I don't want to write and draw it, then they would give it to somebody else. But I always had first refusal. And what happened was, we were about halfway through the Garbage Man series, through this series of anthology books that they were doing, and they got Swamp Thing back. So my character became completely obsolete before I was even done with the series. So it never got used, and it just sat there, and then Dan finally just gave it back to me. So it worked out in the end. But
yeah, well, I would say so.
So I actually took all the stories from DC and then went to Dark Horse with it and did a collection, and that's what my Garbage Man trade paperback that's available on my website and stuff, and it has been available through campaigns that I have. I had to take Batman out of it because he was kind of a background character in it, and put in my own characters, so I had to redraw some pages and stuff. But so I was able then to collect that into a trade paperback where it didn't, other than, you know, the few pages I had to fix to get rid of Batman out of it, it was no cost to me. And then Dark Horse published it and put it out there, and their contract is they got it for like exclusively for 3 years, or whatever, 5 years. They hold the licensing rights to it for 5 years, but that's all past at this point anyway. So I'm free to do with it as I will. But
now I got a couple questions in the chat for you, but before I do that, I'm going to put, if it's okay with you, I'll put a link where people can come on here and join if they've got a question or a comment. Almost no one ever does. But I'll put one in there. I'm trying to get that back. I used to have that all the time with Comic Book Radio.
Someone come on the air and go, ask the question. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so if you guys want to pop in, you got a question or a comment for Aaron. Not for me, for Aaron, for the guest. Tomorrow we got an open line show. You guys can talk my ear off and come on in tomorrow with me. But we got Aaron here tonight. Let's keep the focus on him. There's the link if you guys want to join and want to pop in. And Exerd, thank you for the super chat. Says, could you talk more about writing Wonder Woman? She's part of the Trinity, yet the least known in all of comics, and said to be difficult to write for.
Well, I only wrote one Wonder Woman story, and so one of the problems with writing, not just Wonder Woman, but any of the big characters at DC, or probably at Marvel, I'm sure, is that someone is always coming in over the top of you going, well, we're using her in this crossover event, so you have to add this to your story, and you have to, I mean, when Gail Simone was writing the series, when I was drawing it, they did that to her all the time. She had storylines that she wanted to do, then they got changed and they got altered because they were going to include this and it had to be part of that. And so it can be a very frustrating process. The one Wonder Woman story I wrote was originally for digital comics, and then it got released in a collection. It was kind of a standalone thing where none of the Wonder Woman lore was really involved. So I could just it was this dragon story and all this kind of stuff that was, and so it was just her versus this dragon. There was a little bit of mythology in there, but it really didn't tie into anything. It was a singular adventure, and so there was no problem. But when you start having events going on for, over a 2-year course, those, and she's always in Justice League, and those things all have to be taken into consideration. And to be honest with you, I don't know why Wonder Woman isn't more popular. My guess is that, she's popular in the sense of being an icon, but in terms of the sales, have never really been big compared to Batman and Superman. And it's because she's not a sexy character. She's like America's mom type character. So you don't get your, guys that want to read a comic book, like they'll buy Power Girl, right? You just get you get the women that read it, and then some guys will read it as well. But it's just for whatever reason, that's sort of, I just never saw her as a sexy or sexualized character. And I don't like to do that anyway, but I know that there's a huge audience for that. And I don't think she fits into that category very well. And so therefore you've kind of got this female superhero that like does appeal to women, has a gay following, and but as far as mainstream readers, a lot of guys just Wonder Woman. So, and I think
have they ever tried? Admittedly, I'm not a Wonder Woman reader, but have they ever tried getting or leaning into like the mythology and the pantheon of gods kind of aspect of it?
Yeah, I think they
kind of like Simonson Thor sort of
thing. I think they tried to do that, and again, I'm not. Other than when Gail and I were on it, Gail did a little bit of that, but not a ton of it. Right? It was more superhero stuff and supervillain type stuff. And we would go back to near the end of the run, it got a little bit more into Themyscira and what was going on there and some of that stuff. And I think Cliff Chang took over after me with really high profile writer. Who was it? One of those British guys. And it did pretty well. No, it was Brian Azzarello, I think. And I think they did more of that mythology stuff, and I know some of the writers they've had since then have done that, and but I don't know if Simonson did this great balance of Thor, getting into the Thor mythology, but it was still a kick butt superhero book, so he really balanced both of those elements. And Wonder Woman seems to go one way or the other. I don't know that they've ever really balanced that as well as they could, and maybe people just aren't. I don't know. That's the only insight I have to why the character isn't maybe as popular as the other big two in that regard.
Now, you worked at both Marvel and DC, correct?
Yeah.
Given what's going on present day with both companies, and I don't mean necessarily to the minutia of the titles or the writing or the whatever, but you've just been given the opportunity and you have to take it. You can't turn it down. You're going to run one of them. Which one do you run, and how would you do it?
I'd take Marvel simply because I'm a Marvel zombie. And those are the characters that when I took over Wonder Woman, I was reading villains in the script. I had no idea who they were. I was like calling up people going, please help me. I don't know who these characters are, because I was never into DC. And I would, I'll tell you exactly what I would do. I would go in and I would have an event comic that was like a mini series. And it's essentially, it would be all the godlike characters like Galactus, the Beyonder, all these characters, and the battle. It would almost be like Secret Wars, except it wouldn't be a secret. And Earth gets destroyed. Okay, so we destroy the entire timeline of everything, and then we go to a counter Earth, or maybe you have the High Evolutionary or somebody come in and start things over. And so we can then relaunch every title, but have it updated, like the Iron Man story, what they did in the movies. Now, instead of Vietnam, it's the, Iraqi war or something like that, right? That makes Iron Man more modern. Thor wouldn't make that much difference, but Fantastic Four would be updated. and make more sense in a contemporary society, where Reed Richards is probably more like Elon Musk than he is, whatever he was doing in the 60s. But I would stick to the core of what those characters were. I'm just talking about revamping them a little bit, for modernizing them, I guess would be a better way of putting it. And I'd relaunch everything, and I'd start just like they did before. The first month I'd release FF and maybe Spider-Man and maybe Thor, and then the second month you got the Avengers and Iron Man and Daredevil, and you know what I mean, and just I'd start the whole thing over, because I think it's so convoluted at this point that it's just like it's mind-numbing to try and keep up with what's going on with this character. And oh, wait a minute, wasn't there a clone back in the 70s? Is that the same? You know what I mean? And all this kind of crap. And I would actually encourage my guys, whoever was writing and drawing, I would encourage them to kind of follow the template that the original books did. Like in the first issue, he's going to fight the Mole Man, but it's your Mole Man story, not what Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did. And and kind of start and bring Dr. Doom in around the 5th issue, just like they did in Fantasy Four number 5, and then get all that, everything built back up and everything reintroduced, and then just sort of go forward from there.
So you'd kind of have like a Big Bang sort of
thing.
Absolutely.
I'd destroy absolutely everything and get rid of a lot of these lame characters that were created for political reasons or created because somebody up the chain of command wanted a royalty check, so they made people use their characters and they're just lame, and clean it out. I mean, the X-Men is way too convoluted. There's just, just bare bones it. I think it would jumpstart a lot of interest in readership going in to find out what was going on, and then you'd have the same opportunity to hook them like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did back in the day. So there you go. It's never going to happen, folks, but that's what would happen.
That's what would happen if Aaron Lopresti was in charge of Marvel Comics.
That's right.
That should be a what if issue at the very least. What if Aaron Lopresti ran the Marvel Universe? And people would be like, what the hell? Who's Aaron Lopresti?
Yeah, who's he think he is, and why is he
here's another one of these self-insert characters. All right.
They'll start with me sitting at my drawing table, ready to be drawing myself.
You know what, though? I'd read it. 10-8, thank you for the super chat. Says Aaron, still considering a black and white barbarian tale? Savage Tales of Aaron?
I was just thinking about it today, actually. That's one of the reasons I was bringing up newsprint with you earlier in the show, because we talked about this thing last year. I just haven't had a chance to do it, but when I finished out Wraith of God 3, I'm like, do I want to do another major project, or maybe I want to slip something in that's kind of smaller, that wouldn't take me as long, and a black and white Savage Tales type magazine would be a blast. So that's on the table, certainly at this moment.
Sounds good. All right, looks like we got somebody joining us for a question or comment, hopefully for you. We got Katie Did. What's up, Katie Did?
Hey, Aaron.
Hello, Katie.
You're like, dang it, not her. No.
Katie and I have quite a back and forth on our my Graybeard show. She's always in the chat terrorizing me. So.
Gotcha. Katie, did I have one question for you? Are you
sure?
Are you named that after the cricket?
Well, no. My aunt gave it to me when I was young because I always got into trouble. I was a wild child, and she would say, "Katie did what?" So it just ended up being a nickname stuck with me for forever. Okay. So I even have my tattoo of it. So he lives in my memories with it. So yeah, but yeah, it's a cricket too. Like
you were a troublemaker as a kid. I don't believe it.
I know, right? I was an angel. I don't know what you're talking about.
Or what's your question or comment there for Aaron?
All right. Well, Aaron, I want to ask you about with Wraith of God. Like, do you plan to get it in a direct market? Do you plan to put it on bookshelves? And also, I have one more. So, but you can answer that, Aaron.
Well, as you probably know, the profit margin is what the problem is for comic book shops, right? And people say, well, it's already printed, it's already put together. Why can't you just split it up and put it into floppies and put it in the direct market? The problem is there's still the printing cost of putting, even though the art and everything's done, I still got to pay for the printing of that book. And there's always question marks about what kind of sales you're going to get. And so to answer your question, we kind of toy with those ideas. I know Billy Tucci does it quite a bit and pretty effectively, but he has a much larger audience than I do at this point. But it's something that, provided the direct market survives, right? It's something we're looking at. But I've got to figure out a way that I feel comfortable that I make enough money to make it worth my while for the effort that I've put into do it. So how's that for a non-answer?
That's a good answer. It's understandable. And one last one. I know Pete has a lot of people watching him who have their own campaigns and putting their stories out there. And I just want to ask, what advice would you give to those people who are starting out with their campaigns? Like, what would be a great advice for them that you wish you had when you started crowdfunding?
Well, I had an advantage. This is the problem when people ask, because I get this question quite a bit, as you can imagine. And I had an advantage that having worked in the industry for 30 years. And so I had some name recognition. I could say, oh, that's the guy that drew Planet Hulk, or that's the guy that drew Wonder Woman, and that's extremely helpful in terms of getting a trust factor from your audience, because they know what to expect from you because they've seen it over the years, and they automatically assume that you're not going to screw them over. In my case, they're correct. That's not saying that there's people that work in the industry that don't screw, people over on crowdfund. But so that was a great advantage that I can't, that's not something that someone coming in can replicate. But I always tell people the same thing. You've got to be self-aware enough to understand the quality of your product and understand that quality level is going to help your sales or hurt your sales. And it's not just, I saw a lot of guys come into the Comicsgate scene shortly after I did, because we were getting big numbers at that time, where I was like low man on the totem pole, and I was bringing in $150,000 on the campaigns, right? And everybody thinking, oh my gosh, this is gold. This is the gold rush. I'm just going to put a book out there and it's going to, well, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. So it's the same thing that I would say if you were trying to do something with Marvel or DC. You've got to have a character that, just because it was your favorite when you were, 12, does it hold up? Is it something that's going to have a mass appeal? And I hate to commercialize it so much, because we talk about this being an artistic medium, and an artistic expression is so important. But you also have to look at the commercial aspect of it if you want it to be successful. If you're just putting it out there because you want, this is a vanity project and I really want it out there just so I can say I published my thing, that's one thing. But if you're out there thinking, how can I make profit on this? How can this be successful? You got to think of things in terms of, is this character viable? Is it something, does it have a broad enough appeal? And is it interesting enough that's going to draw a large enough audience to support it? So really take a look at your characters would be my first suggestion. And if you're not an artist, do your best to find someone, probably a young and up and comer that has some talent, that isn't expecting to get paid a ton, because obviously you're not going to have a ton of money. And for the love of God, be responsible and do the work and get it out when you're supposed to get it out, because that goes a long way. Maybe your first campaign is underwhelming, so you don't want to quit your day job yet, right? And you put it out. But you get it out, people are like, hey, this is pretty good, and this guy delivered. So then your second one, maybe you got a few more people that are willing to trust you. You got this slow growth process, right? So if you're able to do this while keeping, and I assume most people that are jumping in are much younger than I am, that you can have a day job and work nights and get your book out, so you still have some security blanket while you're trying to do this and build an audience. But I think, again, if you put out quality stuff, you will find an audience. And if you become reliable and people can trust you, and you treat your customers with respect, and you go that extra mile for people, if a package gets damaged, and even if it's not your fault, replace it at your cost. I mean, you got to be willing to do those things, and then you gain that trust from your audience, and then hopefully that builds as you do more and more projects.
Awesome. Well, that's great advice. Thank you, Aaron, for that. I appreciate it. And I'll go so that way someone else can come on and ask questions. But it's good seeing you, so Aaron.
Much, it's good to see
I'll catch you on
your frozen picture there of. But I have seen you live. You did show. Was it Comicsgate Kings you showed up on? And I was like, I wasn't sure if the universe was going to explode or not with us being on the same stream together. But it managed to work out okay.
Yeah, it's been great, and I've enjoyed Graybeard, so I really suggest everyone to go. And Aaron's got other great shows too, but the one that's a great draw-in stream is Graybeard. It's every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Great chemistry with Gary Martin, David Williams, Dan Lawless, and you guys get some special guests. But I've been enjoying watching it, and been glad to support you here, Aaron. And Pete, thank you so much for giving me time.
No problem.
I appreciate you bringing the spice to the chat. So keep it up.
Anytime. I will. Well, you did give me a wrench, so I'm still. You're my big thing. You're my favorite. So there you go. But
thank you. Appreciate it.
Right, thanks for stopping by, Katie.
No
Have a
problem.
great night.
Thank you. You too. Bye, guys.
Bye.
So yeah, that makes me. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Let me get to NXerts first. NXert, thank you for the super chat. Says, how do you feel about Tom Brevoort as well as his current Substack saga with Amazing Spider-Man?
I haven't read it, so I can't even comment on it. How do I feel about Tom? I don't know Tom well. I never actually worked with him, so I only knew him superficially. But yeah, I probably should leave it at that. I don't.
Yeah, I've never had an interaction. I've seen others have theirs.
Yeah,
Swine
problems, but I haven't experienced it, so I shouldn't be
Swine Dog, thank you for says I just finished reading King Cryptid 1 through 9. Great stuff. Thanks, Pete. Thank you so much, Swine Dog. Appreciate that. And if you enjoyed 1 through 9, currently 10 to 13 are funding on alternacomics.com/King Cryptid and also on kingcryptid.com, which will take you to the Indiegogo. Now, my question for you, when you were talking about the things you've been doing in terms of crowdfunding and what you feel is not an innate advantage, because obviously you worked to get to where you were. But when there's people out there that are putting together their campaigns and getting these characters going, and maybe they are not meeting their goals, maybe they're not finding that they're having success, is there any kind of concrete advice you can give to them other than the usual thing of like, well, just try again?
In terms of to be more successful if they didn't hit it the first
time? So let's say they put together a campaign, they didn't make a... Okay, so I'll give you a whole scenario. This way you can kind of answer it. I've seen, and this is based on a general kind of thing of what I've seen of the average person who gets out there, has a real tough time, especially with their first one. They generally haven't built up their social media. They don't have a YouTube. They don't really have many preview pages or anything like that on the campaign. The character that they have on there is kind of either generic or too derivative, perhaps, of one that already exists. And as far as their promotion goes, they're kind of just counting on others to promote for them. They're not really getting out there and promoting. They're not really doing a lot of these things. And then they meet, or don't meet, I should say, their goal. They don't actually achieve the thing they want to achieve, which is to reach the funding goal and to make that comic. Now, I've already set up a bunch of different things for you to be like, well, do the opposite of what Pete just said.
Yes.
But there's a lot of people out there that you'll see a lot of these campaigns where it feels like they're not really aware of how to go about all those things, because obviously if they were, they would probably do them. So when it comes to the promotion aspect, when it comes to the character creation aspect, when it comes to choosing talent, what would you give in terms of advice to maybe make that next go around a little more successful for them?
Well, I'll tell you this, before I even, and coming in with, okay, when I was still at DC, right, and I was kind of, you know, I'd watched what Ethan was doing and some of the other guys, and I was toying with the idea. And I thought, well, so I thought I would try and crowdfund to do the Garbage Man trade paperbacks. I said, this will be a good litmus test, right? It's all the work's done. You know, I don't have to pay anybody to do anything. I just got to cover my printing costs and all this kind of stuff. And so I put it out there, and I went on Ethan's show for like an hour and a half, you know, and then I said, oh, I got to go. I got to pick my daughter up from dance. And they were all like stunned, like, where are you going, dude? You got to sell this book, you know? And I didn't understand how it worked, you know what I mean? And so though it didn't raise enough money, and this is, I was thinking, oh, I'm working on Justice League right now. Everybody's going to want to buy this, right? Did not happen. So what I learned was that I started my own YouTube channel, right? And just talking about comics or whatever it was. And I wasn't even sure what I was going to do. You know, I thought, well, I'll do some, you know, me drawing and then me talking about maybe some of my experiences and things like that. And, you know, I started off with, you know, 30 people watching, you know, and Shelly would come on pretty frequently and we'd go, oh my gosh, we got 50 people this time, you know, and it was this slow build. And I was YouTubing a year before I even got ready to launch Wraith of God, because I under the failure of the Garbage Man trade paperback first time around made me realize that, you know, I was trying to put the cart before the horse, right? I was like, I got to lay the groundwork. Now, at that time, I was still working at DC, so I still had that paycheck coming in. And I was able to YouTube and start to build. And it was, you know, it was a slow build to even get it to 1,000 subs and all that kind of stuff where you can start monetizing. And it took time, but I created a presence, right? And the unfortunate thing, especially for guys that aren't comfortable doing that, it's the best way to advertise, because you can put up like 5 or 6 or 10 promo things a day on Twitter and Facebook, and so few of the people that are following you actually ever see them. It's amazing how little that stuff actually gets seen, because if it's not coming up on the timeline right when someone's watching, they're going to miss it. And so I found that was not a sufficient way to promote my book. So the YouTube channel thing was the first step, and it was a very slow build, but like I said, I did it for a year. And then I realized that after watching, you know, Ethan and other guys that were crowdfunding books, watching what they were doing, and they would just do marathons, right? It's not just you're on there for an hour and hey, hope you see. They were on there for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours.
Madness.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I started to realize that that's how you do it. It's almost like a telethon, right? But you've got to be comfortable in front of the camera to be able to do that. And some people are, some people aren't. And so if you're not, that's a really big disadvantage, because you're going to find that there's a lot of people willing to have you on their show or whatever and promote your book, but they're busy promoting their own stuff, you know, and they got their own stuff they have to worry about and deal with. So you're only going to get a limited amount. And I've had, you know, I have something on my show that I do every once in a while called Creator's Corner, where I'll bring in someone to promote their book. And I've had good people on there, and I've had lousy people on there. I had guys, I don't mention any names.
Hey, you know, I'm right here, Aaron.
No. You're one of my best guests, Pete. I had people on that just, you couldn't get information out of them. It was like pulling teeth, trying to get them to talk about their project and pitch their project, you know? And I was like, dude, you're wasting my time and you're wasting your time, you know? And so you've got to be able to be comfortable talking about it. And again, there's so many. The indie market is different now in the sense that back in the late 80s with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Tick and all this other, Fish Police and all this other stuff that was coming out that time, there was like, they had these small black and white print runs that a lot of guys would just get a comic shop to, fund their book, some sort of deal. And it would get in the distribution stream. And then because of Ninja Turtles, the whole black and white movement got hot and people were grabbing that stuff like crazy. And it helped sales with a lot of, people that were completely unknown. That sort of collector frenzy doesn't really work that way in crowdfunding. So the number one thing is you got to make sure that you're a presence that people are familiar with, however you do that, before you even launch your book, because you launch it and it's just going to sit there because no one knows about it, and no one knows who you are, and they're like, you know what I mean? And so that to me is the biggest precursor in this current market, is the promotional aspect of it. And right now the best way to do it appears to be YouTubing, or even short videos on Instagram and stuff like that, where you're posting them a lot, and then you can pick up quick hits and things like that. But it's as important as your book. And
I mean, this is the equivalent of like public access TV.
Yeah, exactly.
At the very least, it's like the poor man's version of being on TV.
Right.
And that's still one of the most effective ways to get the word out there. So if you had enough money to take out an ad on television, which actually isn't that much if you do localized ads. We had localized ads back in 2018, 2017. We did some local ads that aired on like Comedy Central and Cartoon Network.
Were you able to track the like, did you have people say, I saw your ad on TV when you order, that kind of thing? Were you able to figure out?
It was kind of interesting. People being like, because we had it, one was around when South Park was being played, and then one was during like Rick and Morty and like Aqua Teen, Hunger Force, or whatever the incarnation of it was at that time. So it was interesting to see people being in the local area, if I ever do like conventions or signings, and being like, I could swear I saw a commercial for you guys. I was like, well, yeah, because we partnered up with a local comic shop. We did two different ones, partnered with two different comic shops, and then filmed a commercial. It was just it was a weird commercial of just I had the idea of, because we had the newsprint, you walk into a comic shop, we follow this person through the first person view of you walk in a shop, you see everybody just sniffing the comics. And I said the motivation is it's as if you're walking into a comic shop that would be in like Twin Peaks or something, very offbeat, very weird. People doing like this strange thing. They're not reading the comics, they're just sniffing them. And the whole point of the commercial was newsprint was back, and that to find our books at your local shop. And anyone that knows newsprint books, they have a very specific aroma, And so yeah, it was interesting to see how that went, and it wasn't that much money to get something going. It was only like a couple $100, and we split it with the shop, and then we got like I think 20 different spots throughout the course of a month. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, to your point, you really have to have this kind of I call it, you got to crowd build before you crowdfund.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
An audience, who are you crowdfunding to?
Yeah,
right?
It's the equivalent of like if you're in a band and you're going to perform, and your band is supposed to have, or generally would have had, like some kind of an audience that would support you when you tried to jump off the stage and crowd surf.
Right.
Do people still crowd surf? They must.
I don't know.
Are they still scared to death of COVID or anything? They must still crowd surf somewhere. But it would be like that. Imagine like you're going to take the leap off the stage, which is launch your crowdfunder, and no one's at your show.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard landing.
It's a hard landing. Yeah. It's a much softer landing, and you still have to put your trust that the audience will catch you, of course. But it's easier to kind of have that vibe when there's people that are there.
Right. And the other thing is you can't be afraid of the business aspect of it, because it's now going to be half of what you're doing. And I kind of enjoy it, even though it's frustrating as heck. I was like, But just you being, aggressive enough to go to a comic shop and put together this whole deal where you could actually put a commercial out. I mean, that's forward thinking. That's having some business acumen. And, my business acumen is hiring people that I have to hire to do stuff and pay them and deal with the printer. Actually, I have a rep, but I have to deal with her, and then she deals with the printer and all the headaches that come along with that, which is enough to drive you crazy. But you can't be afraid of any of that stuff. It's really a complicated job. And I would tell this when I was teaching art to guys that wanted to be, comic book artists. It was like, you're going to get nothing but rejection, and you better be ready for it, or you're not going to make it, because you have to get through that wave of rejection. And it's kind of like you have to get through that wave of failure in the indie market, thinking, I'm going to make this much money, and you make $4,000 or whatever, or $3,000, and you're like, geez, that doesn't hardly pay my printing costs. And so that's why I said, is like, put some money together so you can operate in the red for a while, or don't quit your day job, so that it's a hobby until it becomes a profession, kind of thing, and kind of safeguard yourself, because it does take time, especially if you're coming just out of nowhere. And again, if you're like super talented and you just haven't been discovered yet or whatever, people see that, and that helps move it along. But you can't avoid the hard work aspect of it, which is promotion and the business side of it.
Well, even with yours, one of the things I love about following you on Twitter is the art that you'll post. I love seeing the art that you post. It's one of the highlights of whenever I dare peek at my Twitter feed.
Thank you. You know what I found out was I made a decision before I even got involved in this, and it doesn't really fit my personality anyway, but I'm not someone that goes online and criticizes other people, and I'm just not comfortable doing that. Getting in fights, creating drama to get an audience, which does work. I mean, it does work. It's a valid way to do things, but that's not me. So I'm like, well, what can I sell? Well, all I can sell really is my artwork, right? And so on social media, that's all I do is post artwork, and then of course stuff about my campaign, but that's still artwork. And you'd be amazed at how I was able to grow my Twitter and my Facebook and Instagram just by posting art, and posting a lot of it, and art that people want to see, right? I mean, every once in a while you throw in, oh, look at this Wraith of God thing. And there's only maybe 2,000 people that know what Wraith of God is, because that's how many people ordered the book or whatever, right? But then you put up a Hulk drawing and suddenly you got 8,000 views, or you put up Savage Land Rogue, you know what I mean? And then that draws in more people. Then you hit them again with, here's some Wraith of God stuff, or Kit Carter, or whatever my campaign would be at the time, sandwiched in between all this art that maybe they do recognize, and then, oh, hey, what's this? And I really like the way this guy draws Rogue. Maybe I should check out this Kit Carter book. So there's some strategy involved in that. And a lot of people that just post comments and things like that, you get some engagement, but you don't really get the followers. And what you need is that huge number for your followers, because such a small percentage of those numbers actually will buy your book. I mean, it's a really low percentage. So the higher numbers you have that are seeing your stuff, the greater your chance that you're going to get more sales. I mean, that's an obvious thing to say, but you have to get big numbers, because, like you say, most of the people are not going to be, backing your book for whatever reason.
Has the self-promotion aspect of indie publishing, has that been the most difficult aspect for you, like the steepest learning curve, or has it been something else?
The learning curve, the biggest hassle for me is dealing with the printers, because, and we talked about this a little bit backstage, was that you think you've got everything figured out, and then they'll do something that you hadn't thought of and screw it up.
Yeah. Anytime it's out of your hands, it's
right.
nerve-wracking.
You can mark that down on your list, right? And go, okay, make sure I double check this next time, because, and then you double check everything, and then it's that other thing you hadn't thought of, and they screw that up, and then you got to go back to. So dealing with that drives me nuts. I was in acting classes. I did plays all the way up into high school, So being in front of a camera, trying to come up with some sort of performance art that would get people to watch, I kind of have fun with that. It doesn't bother me that much. And the more you do it, and it was like I told you, like Shelly and I, when we first started, it was like, oh, we got 35 viewers. Well, I invited Dale Keown on to interview him, and suddenly we had 500 people watching. And you see that number up there, 500, and you're like, But now I'm used to it. But at the first time, you kind of get the jitters. You're like, oh my gosh, there's 500 people watching right now. Don't screw this up. But then you get used to it. But that was that. What I don't like is doing this kind of stuff takes me away from drawing on the book, right? Yeah. So you inevitably get behind because you're doing everything. I'm doing my own promotion. I'm doing my own artwork. I'm writing the scripts.
One department's up, the other department's shut down. Yeah, that's exactly what's been difficult for me. I'm getting back in the swing of things of streaming again, and that was really difficult for me when I was doing fulfillment for a few months to really wrap my head around making peace with the fact that if even I'm doing a stream for an hour or so, that's taking away time from the shipping department, the fulfillment department, the writing, the art, everything else that I have going on. And I'm having to convince myself that this is part of the work too, because there was a part of me that was like, this is the fun time, so if this is fun time, I have to sacrifice it, but if I can wrap my head around the fact that no, this is also work, this is part of the work day, then I can carve out time for it in a less guilty kind of feeling behind it.
And it's almost like you putting out your TV commercials, right? You go, well, this is going to cost me X amount of dollars. In this case of YouTubing, it costs X amount of time. But you're not sure what's your return, because you have no way to really kind of qualify it. I mean, I do every once in a while, like I'll do my Sunday show, and I'll bring up Wraith of God and talk about that on my website. And then Monday, I might get an order or two on my website. I got a couple new backers. So you say, okay, that 2.5 hours I spent doing my Sunday show translated to 2 new backers and a couple sales on my website. But it's all the time and the prep time that goes into the show before you do the show.
Yeah, because you have a big production. You don't just come on here and talk like me.
No, you
have a whole presentation.
But it's essential, right? You can't neglect this, or your book's going to fail. This is essential to doing it, but it takes time away from actually doing the book. So it is that balancing act that is really challenging at times.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm finding that out in a big way, because I know that is one of the reasons that King Cryptid 10 to 13 right now is hurting, as opposed to the way the first 2 campaigns were so successful. And I'm lucky that I'm at 102% funded, but it took like 4 months to get to the point on this campaign that the previous campaigns took like 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, we were talking about that too. There's economy, there's fracturing of the fan base, there's all these different things that are sort of like what's causing these lower numbers that everybody's seeing across the board pretty much. And trying to predict, well, is the next campaign, are we going to see an uptick? Is it going to continue to go down? When's it going to level off? All those kind of things. It's really tied, I think, to the economy a lot too. And so
yeah, when I think about stuff like that, and it is partly to do with that, but I always think about that there were millionaires during the Depression.
No, you're right.
There were companies, there were business people, there were people making things that were doing very well because they found what people wanted, and they priced it right, and they got the word out there.
Yep.
And it's like I gotta figure out a way of, like, that's why again I'm getting back in the swing of this stuff, because not only do I enjoy it, but yeah, it does help. And I've noticed a significant drop when I don't do that, whether I'm not on my own channel or whether I'm not on yours or someone else's or whatever, having conversations and getting out there. So it's such a big important part of it, and I think there's a lot of creators out there that they'll overlook this aspect of it. It drives me nuts when I see that they do have social media or they do have a YouTube or whatever, but they don't talk about their books at all. There'll be times when I'm on Twitter and someone will message me and say just something like kind of weird, just being like kind of demanding that they come on my channel to promote their thing. It's like they've never talked to me before. They don't tell me the name of their book. They don't give me a link. They don't do anything. They just go, I'm looking to book time on channels, and I have a book to sell. Can I get on your show? And I'm like, I don't know your name. I don't know your book. I don't know. I go to their page to try to find it out. I can't find anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? You know, and then I'm thinking, I'm going to talk to this guy for like an hour or something. And like, what about?
Yeah, exactly.
Because my channel is also not like a promote the campaign channel. So you don't just like look through the campaign. Like we'll look through it for like 5-10 minutes at the end. But it's not like the way some channels are. Sometimes they have the campaign up the whole time, and it's literally going through like every perk and like every nook and cranny of a campaign. So I'm thinking that like I need more than that. We gotta like, would you like to talk about something? Like, what is this?
Well, that's an excellent point. It's like, how do you format your show, right? Is it like, because if you're just like 2-hour long commercial, then people, here we go again. So there has to be the entertainment value, and then how do you work in the promotional aspect along with the entertainment, right? And a lot of people don't get that either. I mean, and these are things you figure out the more you do it. You're like,
and you got to be willing if you're going to do this too, which I do recommend people do this and get used to it. But you have to talk. There's so many times where people. They don't talk. And I know you've experienced this before too. But not only do they not talk like and converse and go back and forth and just have a regular normal human being conversation, but they don't even really talk about their book. So then you start asking them questions, how'd you come up with this? Like it's the basic stuff, who's working on it or the concept, blah, blah, blah. And it's you're lucky if you get more than a sentence at a time until like there's dead air. And then eventually you run out of like the 5 to 10 easy questions that should have carried you an hour. And you're like, this has just been like 15 minutes.
What do I do?
What do I do the rest of the time?
About Bigfoot now.
And this dude doesn't want to talk. So what do we do? All right, see ya. I gotta.
Thanks for joining us.
What's that, honey? Okay.
Well, that's why when I do have people on that I don't know, I'll just go, okay, I'll give you 30 minutes. We'll do Creator's Corner. We'll go over your campaign. We'll talk about your campaign, and then you're gone. And, that's worked out okay. But even a couple times I did that, it was like getting through 30 minutes was like, what more can you tell me?
Yeah. And it's just, my advice is more for people if they get like that stage fright kind of thing, you're just sharing what it is that you're making. You're just sharing what it is that you do. You're just sharing what it is. Try to tap into like that inner, the kid inside of you that you were really excited about all this stuff at some point before you found out that there is no Marvel bullpen. Before you met Patty in the trailer outside the Hollywood lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Tap into that innocent, like, I'm doing this because I love it part of you, and start talking about what it is you're making and spending so much time and hopefully love and energy making this comic, because otherwise if you can't tap into that, if you can't tap into the whole like I'm sharing this with people and hopefully that it resonates with them, I mean, man, that's gonna be tough.
Yep. Because if you're not excited about your project, why do you expect anybody else to be?
Exactly. Before we wrap things up, I got 2 questions for you here in the chat. Legkick, thank you for the super chat. Says, hi, Aaron. Do you have a story in mind for your next crowdfund, or have you chosen your next character to create? I am almost always here.
Yeah. No. Legkick is almost always here. Here's the thing. Yes. I'm one of those guys that has too many ideas.
Oh, I hear you, brother.
And you're like, okay, then you got to start going, well, which has the best chance of success? What am I really into right now? Do I need a change of pace? I mean, I did back-to-back Wraith of God, and I chose Wraith of God by drawing straws. I mean, no joke, because I had like 5 IPs and I wasn't sure which one would work or which one wouldn't, people respond to. And so I did 2 Wraith of Gods, and I was just like, I was burnt out. I was like, I got to do something different. So I did something totally different with Kit Carter, light, fun, and I really enjoyed. It was, it didn't seem so much like work. Wraith of God is work because there's a lot of detail. It's a lot of drawing and inking. There's just a lot of work there. Kit Carter just felt breezy and fun, and so that was a nice reprieve. So my next project, I've got a fantasy thing along the lines of Lord of the Rings type stuff that I will probably do next as graphic novel, but I am really toying with the idea of just doing like one issue of like a Barbaric Tales or something, black and white magazine, and do like a barbarian thing, and it's kind of a smaller campaign.
I think you should.
I jump right back into another 64 page graphic novel, huge thing.
You should totally do that. You've been talking about wanting to do that for a while. I think you need to get that out of your system.
Clearly I do, because I keep talking about it. I just bought some Savage Sword of Conan's with John Buscema and Rudy Nebres inks over it, and I just love that stuff. So there you go. It'll be one of those two things, and I'm leaning towards the magazine at the moment. So. And
NXer for $2, thank you, says, do you think that floppies are dead or dying?
Dude, you'd know that better than me.
It's a multi-tiered answer for that one. It really depends, like, where are they dead or dying? What creator, what company, what character, what store, the avenue in which you're getting these things. It really depends. I think that they've been dying as we know them, and as they are best utilized for a while. And I mean that floppies work best. It's serialized storytelling. If everything is a big giant event, you don't have the chance for organic growth in the story. You don't have a chance to have these characters that just pop in and pop out and can build up over time and have these guest star appearances and have stories that aren't hinged upon like the 40 other titles and what those characters are doing and chronologically and in continuity where everyone is at this point in time. Does it make sense? With event-driven storytelling being kind of the big thing at the big two with the floppy, it's not utilizing that format correctly. I feel like it's taken such a hit because of that. And then every time we see this over and over again, it goes from event to event to event till eventually they event themselves into a corner and have to have something that either like retcons or reboots and it's exhausting. And instead of giving people like an escape and some really great entertainment and maybe a touching story here or there, something that moves them, something that inspires them, something that makes them go, oh man, that's so cool. Instead of doing that, we're giving them homework and we're making them pay for it.
Analogy. That's funny.
They gotta like cross-reference. Okay, what's going on with this now? And then eventually, because it's so unyielding, you just go like, wow, I don't think that they did this properly because this is all out of order. It doesn't make any sense because it's this big monster that's gone completely off the rails. And I think if the floppies went back to that episodic nature, I think they'd be doing much better.
And I wonder, people say price matters, price doesn't matter, but it's like, and again, I hate to say, well, when I was a kid, but, when comics were in their heyday, you're paying 25 cents for a book, even in the 90s when they were $1, it was still seemed like it wasn't that much money. Now they're, $5-6 for a floppy, and you're thinking, well, if I can get a graphic novel for $20, or I can, buy, trade paperback for $20, or I can buy, every monthly issue of Batman for $5.
Yeah.
Where's the value?
And that's the other thing is they trained the audience to trade weight instead.
Yes.
Instead of making it the way it was before, where it was a big deal to get that story into a trade. You know?
That's true. And
now
it's like you're always on the edge of your seat, right, for what's going to happen next, and what is it Wednesday when Spider-Man comes out again or whatever, those type of things, and that's sort of I get why they do the trades, because it gets in the book market and it's a whole new source of revenue and things like that. But at the higher cost that the comic books are now at, the floppies, I don't know. I mean, that's why it's easier. It's easier to, at least from crowdfunding, from my standpoint, it's easier for me to give you a more expensive book with a ton of pages in it, because I have a better chance of being able to cover my costs and getting a bigger campaign going, than to do smaller campaigns with, a $3 book or whatever, a $4 book. And so you do it the opposite. You sell floppies, but you do usually, your crowdfunds are like issues 1 through 5 or something, right? They're not just single issue, are they?
Yeah, I do like 4 to 5 issues at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
But so guys were sitting in the 70s, sitting around going, we need to get out of comics because this industry is going to be dead in 5 years. I mean, that's what everybody honestly believed. And then comic shops came around and it saved the industry, and then it boomed again for 20 years. And then it died in the mid 90s, and everybody, the comic books are over, but it just keeps resurrecting itself. So there's no reason to believe that in some way, shape, or form that it's going to continue on, but it may not be monthly floppies. So,
yeah. That as you're talking, I'm thinking of things to keep talking to you about, but we do have to wrap it up. Maybe we can continue the conversation again at some point. Kelraiser $4.99 super chat says, Aaron, you need to have a membership with all the content you do each week. You don't have channel membership?
No,
just do like Pete with just a $1.99. Oh man.
But you have to have videos that are specifically for members, right? That can be accessed by.
You don't need to actually do anything. I like to. I know it sounds weird to say that. You should do something. But like you don't need to. But I like to have emojis and stuff that the channel members could use. Mine isn't just 99 cents a month. Mine's very affordable. It's the lowest you could go. I'd make it free if I could. And you can designate videos whenever you want to be a members only thing, but you don't need to create members only content or do something like that. If you just want to do like chat emojis or something or whatever, you could just do that.
See, that's what you're talking about. See, that's the technological challenges that I face. I don't have a young person around here to go, oh,
you don't have to even do that either.
How do you create your own emojis? I don't even know. What are you talking about?
All it is just like, it's like a little image. It's just like a little, I forget what it is. If it's like 30 by 30 pixels or something like that or whatever. You know,
where do you get it from?
You just make your own thing. It could even just be like a face of one of your characters. And then you just shrink it down to that size.
Okay.
And then you would upload it into the channel membership thing. And it has all the stuff there that you can.
Kevin Thomas has got it. I should show my student films for a premium. That's what I should do.
There you go. Yeah. Someone on YouTube probably has some kind of tutorial where you can easily navigate.
But see, that's the waters. Again, right? That's the business side of it, right? And it's kind of like, do I want to take the time to explore all this stuff, or should I be over there drawing that page? So, but you're right. I mean, everybody keeps bugging me. Do subscriptions. I will. I'm going to do it. I'll get my act together. I promise.
Go for it. And no crazy cat. I'm not saying screw your subscribers. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to make it not as intimidating for Aaron as humanly possible.
Exactly. Well, right, that's like people. I'm sorry, I know you want to end the show, but it's like people used to do, and I guess they still do, like sign up for newsletters, things like that, right? I mean,
newsletters are huge. Yeah, that's a big
content or something.
That's a good way to, yeah. And yeah, crazy cat. I know you're just kidding. That's you bust balls over here. I know that's what you do. It's okay. It's cool. Hey, I grew up playing hockey. I'm used to getting my balls busted. So, Wraith of God number 3, Fear Hollow. This is a fun-looking campaign here. If you haven't had a chance to back it yet, it should still be pinned to the top of the chat. Should still. Sometimes I look up there and I'm like, I don't know. Is it still there? If it's not, there's the link. It's right here. It's also in the description of the show. And just you're a pro at this, so just a quick a pitch and a rundown, and the favorite perk you think that they should back.
The elevator pitch. This is the third installment of the Wraith of God graphic novel series, and this time the Wraith and Esther go up against the Headless Horseman, a character that the Wraith has faced in his past. So a lot of past stuff is brought up in this issue, a little bit more about his origin. We get a little more background. It's a chilling tale. It's the scariest one I've written, I can tell you that. And I would not miss it. If you don't know who Wraith of God is, he's basically a Batman of the Old West. He's a master of disguise, of science, illusion, hand-to-hand combat. And he has a helper, kind of his Alfred, if you will, Esther, who is a Salvation Army worker that he tricked into becoming his partner. So they have sort of a contentious relationship, and they go around the Old West hunting down monsters. And it's a weird combination of superhero monster book, and then you've got the historical drama type of the Old West. So a lot of elements in there that make it kind of interesting and unique. So I want to at least give it a look and check it out. These are, of course, some of the pages from the third issue here. There's the Wraith.
Nice. It's like it's a very pulp kind of character. It looks like that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, kind of a lot of people say, oh, it's kind of like Zorro with a little of a mask or something, and it's except the interesting the comic book or the fantasy aspect of this is the fact that they are fighting monsters all the time. This is a backup story that if we were to get to 100K, that David Williams will be drawing, which is an origin story for one of my superhero characters from my vast universe, the Lopresti verse of characters that the Wraith of God exists in. We have trading cards and things like that as stretch goal, because I'm one of those like nerdy guys that wants like a huge card collection of all my characters in a set.
Oh, preaching to the choir.
So I keep doing trading cards. They're a lot of fun. And some of the add-ons, you've got limited edition print that you can get. That's if you want to scroll down just a little bit more, Pete, if you don't mind. Yeah, there it is. Wraith of God Nouveau print.
Nice.
That's a nice piece that you can get signed and numbered. I have the Wraith of God Roughs Volume 3. This is 48 pages of layouts that I did for the graphic novel. So you can actually see what the process is from my layouts and then take a look at the finished piece and see where what did I adhere to? What did I change? So that's kind of fun. We have a series of shot glasses that are laser etched. This one is Nightclub. We've done Wraith of God. We've done Garbage Man. We did Kit Carter. And on this campaign, we have the Nightclub. If you're saying, what's the Nightclub? It's a super team, part of my Lopresti verse, that if you check out Wraith of God 2, Blood Hunters, there's a backup story in there containing the Nightclub. Also, they appear in the Garbage Man trade paperback, and also just a bit in the epilogue of Wraith of God 1. And if you need those back issues, you can order them on the campaign, or you can actually go to my website, which is just aaronlopresti.com, and you can order any of these books, any of the campaigns you missed out on, Kit Carter, any of the Wraith of God issues, posters, prints, sketchbooks, original art. It's all there on the website, so you can go check those out. And everything ships almost immediately, like next day type shipping. So
it's fantastic. Very nice. So yeah, if you guys have not had a chance yet to check this out, do yourself a favor and visit that link. I'm going to put it one more time here in the chat for you, and then we are going to bid adieu. All right, Aaron, it's been great. Always a blast. Could easily go 2-3 hours if I had the time. I unfortunately do not. And you probably don't either.
On right now.
So yeah. But everybody, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. You guys were awesome in the chat. Thank you for your questions, your comments, all that good stuff. Aaron, thank you. Man, this was great.
Thanks for having me on.
And
I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to the next one. So everyone have a wonderful evening and an even better tomorrow. I'll catch you guys soon. All the best.